Alexis Williams,
Elise Gentry,
Chloe Kelly, and I'm a student at Howard University.
Preparing for disasters is important to us all.
being prepared means making sure I have access to local alerts and warnings.
In fact, as a college student, being prepared literally means making sure you know what to do in case of an emergency.
Knowing where to get accurate local alerts and warnings. Download the FEMA app today to make sure you're getting real-time weather alerts for where you live.
And one of the best ways to make sure you're prepared is to build a kit so you have what you need in an emergency.
Visit ready.gov today so you can see how to build a kit from common, everyday items you already have.
In fact, let's do this. Go to ready.gov/plan so today you and your family know what to do in case a disaster strikes.
And as always, stay bison safe.
And preserve your legacy.
Ain't you?
You know?
And welcome again to the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. FEMA and the Ad Council are releasing new Ready campaign PSAs developed specifically to target the Black community as part of FEMA's ongoing approach to advance accessibility and cultural competency in boosting the nation's preparedness. FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell and Deputy Administrator Erik A. Hooks recently visited Howard University for a series of events kicking off National Preparedness Month and announcing the new Ready campaign. Joining us right now to talk about it, the initiative is Deputy FEMA Administrator Erik A. Hooks. How you doing, Erik?
I am doing well. Glad to be with you this morning.
Glad to have you. So let's just jump right into it. Let's first start off with, what are the key steps to prepare for an emergency for the Ready campaign?
Well, great question. And so at FEMA, we take an all hazards approach, and what we want to get out all across the nation, and in particular to communities of color, is to prepare yourselves for a lot of different hazards that we face, whether they're hazards that are natural or whether they're man-made hazards as well. In particular with hazards, we have hazards from wildfires, particularly in the Midwest. We have wildfires that impact them. Earthquakes in the mid-Atlantic area, we also have to prepare. We're still in the height of Atlantic hurricane season, and so we have to prepare for those. But beyond those major disaster events, we also need to be prepared for flooding. Flooding is one of the most persistent disasters that we see all across the country, and the reality of it is this, that if it rains, it can flood, and if it flood, unfortunately, it can kill. And so we want to caution people to not take rain and riverine flooding for granted. And so we want people at the individual level, at the community level, to prepare for all hazards. And that comes in many forms. That may mean creating a plan, and we advise strongly that families create a plan so that they can respond to disasters at the individual level. And that may mean keeping a supply of water for 3 to 5 days. Also, beyond water and food supplies, we also want to encourage our communities to make sure that they have enough medicines to sustain them for 3 to 5 days until the situation may improve. And we also emphasize, don't forget about your neighbors, and also don't forget about your pets as well. They're valuable family members, and we want to make sure that we prepare for them as well. A lot of individuals, particularly individuals in communities of color, may not realize that you can make these plans at really little to no cost. And so on our ready.gov website, there's a link on there that can show you how to make a plan, fill out the plan, and share it with your friends and families and neighbors. And we really want to spread the word and lift that up. Yeah. One of the other things that we really want to emphasize is to listen to trusted local authorities. And if you get that order or request for evacuation, please heed that call. It can save the life of you and the people that you love.
Yeah, Administrator Hooks, what are the most important elements of a disaster preparedness plan?
Some of the most important elements that I would say is to make sure that you have a communications plan to reach out to loved ones, whether you're in distress or to just to let them know that you are safe. Some of the other things that I would highly emphasize is to make preparations to have food, water, and medicine that would last you for several days because it may take a while for disaster relief to get to you. And so we want to lift those things up in particular. And we also want to make sure that we take precautions, that we listen to trusted sources as to when storms are on their way, particularly for a storm threat environment, and make sure that we do not drive through standing or running water. One of the things that we often think about are major events, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, earthquakes, but rain can also lead to flooding in areas, and that can be deadly. And it's very persistent across the country right now, where we are seeing increased flooding, and that often disproportionately impacts communities of color.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'm looking at a report over here, Black and African American communities. Of course, we know we suffer disproportionately from everything, including the impact of disasters. But it also mentions here, and this is from FEMA, it's from you guys, Black communities are on the front lines of climate change and related extreme weather events. Talk a little bit about that and directly to Black communities and what is happening in the Black community and what they really need to know at this point as we observe Preparedness Month.
Well, the impacts are often felt more disproportionately in communities of color. A lot of that has to do with the economics of those communities in which a lot of people of color live on, and the lack of infrastructure as well. And so we need to make sure that we are particularly cautious in order to protect the legacies of property and life in our families. We have a rich history of being resilient and survivors in this nation, and so we need to make sure that during natural disaster events that we are equally prepared to be resilient, to be able to recover. And so that's why we offer those tips and those cautionary tales that are out there that impact our community. But beyond that as well, there are man-made threats that pose significant risk in our community. We have seen over the last year or so, maybe even a little bit beyond that, threats to our HBCUs of reported bombing threats and things like that. And so we want to make sure that we take those things seriously and we prepare, and we again list it to trusted voices. And if we're told to evacuate, we need to adhere to that advice from law enforcement and your local emergency managers to keep yourself safe and keep your loved ones safe as well.
And the Ready campaign, give us a little bit more information. For instance, where will we see the campaign? Where will we see the effects of the campaign, really? Because I know you're targeting certain areas. Tell us a little bit more about how we can find more information on the Ready campaign.
Well, every year we want to have a particular emphasis on to get to communities right where they are. And so we are being pretty expansive. We want to use formats such as you offer to many readers and viewers around the nation so that we can meet communities where they are. And so you will see a number of public service announcements. You will see FEMA and other federal representatives out in the field, making sure that we really push preparedness. We have gotten pretty good at response, but we really need to pivot to preparedness and mitigation on the front end in order to save and sustain lives. And so we are doubling down on those efforts, but really preparedness is a year-round mindset that we all need to have.
And based on what you've been able to see in previous campaigns, this campaign that's just kicking off, are we prepared? Are we ready for a disaster in our communities? We see what's going on in Jackson right now in Mississippi. How ready are we, and how far do we have to go?
Well, it's an ongoing battle, and in some places it's an ongoing struggle because we see differences in infrastructure in different communities, and we see needs that are different in every community. And so one of the goals of FEMA is to meet people where they are and meet communities where they are. And so we are making extraordinary efforts to work with our state and local authorities so that we can clearly understand what the risks are in their area and also educate and inform the public as best we can to steps that they can take to protect themselves in a time of disaster.
And Administrator Hooks, you mentioned educating the public. Is there a specific um, uh, thing that folks are really lacking when you go and talk to people? What are you finding that they just don't get?
Well, there are a number of things depending on the community. Sometimes it's just an issue of complacency that people say that, well, I haven't gotten flood insurance because it hasn't flooded in my area, or I haven't prepared, or I haven't stocked up on a few days of extra water, or having some food or medicines prepared because I haven't experienced it. But what I am trying to get across to the American public, and particularly to our communities, is that we are seeing the frequency increase in natural disasters, the severity increase in natural disasters, and the impact to our communities has increased. And so we need to remain vigilant because that day will come.
Yeah, so the key is don't wait for that day to come, right? Be proactive, be prepared.
Absolutely, and the saying is true. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And the difference in staying ready and then being late and get ready could cost lives.
Well, FEMA's Deputy Administrator Erik A. Hooks, but we appreciate you stopping in on Let It Be Known, the Black Press of America's flagship morning program. Thanks so much, and we will do what we can as the Black Press to help get that message out as well.
Thank you, and thank you for being trusted voices all around the nation. And I'm very honored to be with you this morning.
Absolutely. Deputy FEMA Administrator Erik A. Hooks, thank you all for watching. Applications are now being accepted for the second annual Black Theater Coalition Broadway Across America Fellowship Program. This program takes place over 14 weeks each spring semester and is geared toward Black identifying undergraduate juniors, seniors, recent graduates, and early career professionals who are looking to learn the inner workings of theater business. Bree Turner, who graduated from the University of Florida in May 2021 with a dual degree in political science and theater with a concentration in theater management, joins us now to talk about this program. How you doing, Bree?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. This is interesting. Tell us about this program. When did it start? This Broadway Across America Fellowship, and what's the goal?
Sure. So, this program, the fellowship, the idea was born out of a conversation between the executives of the Black Theater Coalition and Broadway Across America. And their idea was, we really need to find a way to combat the lack of racial representation on Broadway, not just on the stage, but also off the stage and behind the scenes. And so, this program was created to address that. And what it does is it offers opportunities for young Black college students and recent graduates to learn everything that there is to know about theater business. So, everything that happens behind the curtain that helps put the shows on, not just in New York, but in cities around the United States. And our hope is that we're equipping these young people with the tools necessary to have a successful career in theater business.
Now, Bree, I understand that you interned in Broadway Across America's Fort Lauderdale office down in Florida last year. Then you joined full time as an executive assistant to the president of the John Gore organization, Lauren Reed. Tell us about that. And you also mentioned something off camera about wishing that a program like this was available to you. So tell us about what you do and why a program like this would help future Breeze.
Sure. So I was in a unique position in college in that I had an amazing mentor, Miles Wilkin, who was a professor and also an encourager of mine, who is the co-founder of Broadway Across America. So while working with him in college, he was able to sort of shepherd me into the theater business. And it was through him that I learned about all the opportunities that existed, whether it be in finance, HR, legal, management, and even executive roles. There's a lot of room for Black people to be successful in theater, but you don't have to just be an actor or a creator, although those are, very formidable roles as well. And so I was wondering, as I sort of began my career in theater business, how people who don't have a mentor or someone looking out for them might find their way to the theater industry in this way. And so I feel really lucky and privileged to be associated with this fellowship that helps do just that. I think it's a great way to sort of instill confidence in young Black people who don't know a lot about the business and encourage them to seek out roles in theater business. When we talk about entertainment, it's sometimes a seemingly impenetrable and intimidating industry to work in, and it sometimes feels like if you don't know someone in the business, it's hard to get a foothold. And so, this program really helps to not only teach you what theater business is, but also help build your network so you have people supporting you when you do eventually graduate or want to find a position in the theater world.
Yeah, and it is. It's historically it's been tough for African Americans on Broadway, just like just about anything else, right? If you're talking about on the big screen, certainly, on the Great White Way, as it were. How important is it that we understand that history, though? For instance, the first all black show on Broadway took place very literally on Broadway rather than in it. The one act musical Clorinda, or the origin
Mm.
of the Cakewalk by William Marion Cook and Paul Lawrence Dunbar. It was presented on the roof garden of the Casino Theater in 1898. Um, so how important is to know that history? If you want to come into this business, you want to get on Broadway, especially as a African American, how important is the history?
The history is everything. When we talk about storytelling, I often describe theater as a vehicle for social change. And it's one of the reasons why I pursued theater along with political science when I was in college. I think that entertainment and performance is a really persuasive tool that we have as a community of Black people to share our stories and also to incite conversation. So the history is everything, but it's also important to realize that history is still being made on Broadway. When I came into the business, starting last fall in 2021, I believe that 7 Black playwrights were opening shows on Broadway, and that had never happened before. And we're talking about nuanced Black stories. And just at the Tony Awards this past season, we had such a legendary roundup of Black creatives winning awards and being recognized for their work. A Strange Loop winning the best musical,
Hmm.
and having an all Black cast. These are things that, although seemingly, it's hard to believe, are still quite unheard of on Broadway. And so it's really important to recognize the social climate of Broadway and just know that it's an important time for Black people to be coming into the space and making history.
Yeah, and we know August Wilson is another big name as far as probably the biggest, really, when you think about Fences and his other plays, the piano lesson. He won Pulitzer prizes for them. There's a theater named after him now, but that's like a start, right? Naming a theater after August Wilson, because I think it's 41 Broadway theaters, and more than 20 named after someone. It's the only one named after a black person.
Right.
And so our awareness, a lot of times when African Americans get involved in something, there is this need for awareness. And there's also this barrier, if you will, because there's no acknowledgement of African Americans, or very little acknowledgement. Sometimes we tend to go somewhere else, and here Broadway, you got August Wilson and only August Wilson.
Right. No, it's a great point, and something that the Black Theater Coalition talks about a lot is the illusion of inclusion, and the idea that people can have good intention about being more inclusive, combating racial representation, but what are we really doing within the industry to make those changes? And something like this program, I feel like, is so beneficial because it brings Black people into the space to contribute to the story, or the logistics of how we're telling stories on Broadway, and that's so essential. And I'm sure the idea of Black storytelling for us, by us. That's really what we're trying to do here, and it all starts with getting more people in the room and getting them a seat at the table so that they can contribute to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Black Theater as you well know, has always been used to advance awareness of social issues. Is it any different today?
Do you mean in terms of
What we're
advancing social
seeing,
issues?
yeah, what they're producing today. Are we seeing any difference, or is it more? Are they still aware of that, of the social issues? Are they tackling those issues?
I think so. I think so. When I think back to this last season, just as a patron watching shows on Broadway, I think of A Strange Loop that's centering a queer, fat, black man, and telling his story and the complexities of what it is to live that life, within the theater. And that's a story that, until I witnessed it myself, I hadn't seen presented in the theater. When I think of Thoughts of a Colored Man and the ways in which those narratives were interwoven, it made me realize sitting there in the theater that I'd seen black men on stage before, but perhaps not in a straight play where they aren't singing and dancing and there are nuances and complexities and levels to the storytelling, black storytelling, that I feel like have been done really successfully this year. And so that's something that I'm really proud of, and I think that Broadway's doing better.
Yeah, and so attracting African Americans to Broadway. Now, this fellowship again is really, it sounds really important. It's like you said, it's the second year of it. But attract how tough has it been to attract African Americans to Broadway, despite some of the history that we've already recounted already. But we haven't even gotten into the city portiers and what he accomplished on the stage, and other James Earl Jones. And what's going on with the more recent offerings that you mentioned, along with the Michael Jackson, Tina, those things, even the Temptation. That was a great show. The Temptation is no longer on Broadway, but it was a great production.
Right. Yeah, and Ain't Too Proud is actually touring around the US. So that's one level of it. Is I think that there's a misconception about what Broadway is and where it exists. I think when you talk about Broadway, a lot of times people think of New York, which is amazing, and that is where it begins. But Broadway shows are touring around the US in dozens of markets in every city. So, we really have to amplify the narrative that people have positions and opportunities not just in New York but everywhere. We at Broadway Across America, we have a presence in 48 markets in the United States, and this fellowship program, we're looking to place fellows in cities like Baltimore, Boston, Cincinnati, Fort Lauderdale, Houston, Louisville, Minneapolis, Seattle, and Salt Lake City, in addition to New York. And so that's one way that I think we can help increase exposure, is just by letting people know, even in your own backyard, there's a presence of Broadway and theater, and you can get involved.
Now, some of the actors might think, okay, I want to be placed in New York because that's where the money is. I don't want to go to Seattle. But is that true? There a difference, or a significant difference in what they could earn in New York, on Broadway, or a traveling Broadway show?
Right. Well, first I'll say I see the allure, right? I understand why young people, especially, they're excited. They want to be in New York. It's the happening young city. But I would say that I think when you get your start in another place, it can be really advantageous for you because the pool isn't as flooded, and you can understand what it means to be a part of a touring production. You can understand what it means to create something in a space outside of New York City. New York's not going anywhere, and so to have a varying background of experiences can really yield itself well to making you a more well-rounded creative, well-rounded theater person. But I'll also say, as a reminder, this particular program is more so for people who are interested in learning about offstage theater, are interested in learning about, commercial theater business, whether it be production, programming, presenting, etc. And so, although it's advantageous for you if you're an actor or creative type to learn theater business, it's also open and available to students who study business, finance, sociology, pre-law, etc. So, definitely want a wide range of inquiries.
And is there a financial component?
Yes, so all of the fellowships are paid $15 an hour, 20 hours a week, in each of the markets. And then the program ends with a trip to New York. We fly everyone in for a week of networking and show seeing and just building that foundation of community.
And how does one? What's the criteria? Let's talk about the criteria before we get back into the other great stuff here. But what's the criteria?
Sure. So really, like I said, we're just looking for young, college-aged Black identifying people. So you can be a college-aged junior, a senior, a recent graduate. You could be a graduate student. You don't have to have gone to college. We don't want that to bar anyone from applying. But so that's the foundation. And then the other requirements are just that you can spend the majority of your hours in person in one of our regional offices. We understand that some people may need to be hybrid if you're taking class or on campus, things like that. But we do require that you be able to spend some time in our offices. And the only other requirement is just that you are committed and available and enthused about learning about theater business. We take care of the rest, really.
Yeah. So this is about the business, right? You want to teach them what goes into Broadway, not just this is not about we want you on the stage. This is what
Right,
happens behind the stage.
right, exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask you this too, Bree. It's such a pleasure to have you. Are Black celebrities who started in theater involved in this effort?
That's a good question.
She said, "Let me think about that.
Yeah,
Let me call Denzel up right
I
quick."
know, I know. I have him on speed dial, so just give me a second. I think so. Whether passively or actively, I think is a different conversation. But in my opinion, there's merit in seeing Black people being successful in any space. Like, I take Black success really personally, whether it's someone I know or don't, because I feel like as you grow up, right, we have these idols. And when people are few and far between in a space that you aspire to, they become really important to you. So for me, seeing other, not just Black actors or Black creatives, but also Black businesswomen, Black women in press, Black women doing theater business behind the scenes. Those are the kind of people that really excite me because that's my path, and it reassures me that there's space for me to be successful here. And so when we talk about Black celebrities, I think there are people that are more perhaps involved than others in the effort of helping to expand, but I think by doing the work alone they are still contributing to future Black success.
Yeah, Bree Turner. We're talking with Bree Turner, who is the program director for the Black Theater Coalition Broadway Across America Fellowship Program, which is sponsored by the John Gore Organization. Bree, when you guys started this, what was the feedback, the original feedback and or pushback you received in putting this together? Because again, you're targeting people of color here. You're trying to teach them, give them an opportunity to learn this business. What was the pushback and how difficult was it to get a sponsorship?
Sure. So, like I said, I mean, this whole program was born out of a conversation between Broadway Across America and Black Theater Coalition, and the John Gore organization is actually the parent company of Broadway Across America. So the two groups are very intertwined, and so the John Gore organization, Lauren Reed being the president of our company, she was a part of those early conversations with the Black Theater Coalition, and in fact, she's a contributor to this entire idea. So they have always been on board, as a sponsor of this program, very much so behind it, wanting it to be successful. When I came in last fall and helped contribute a little bit with the help of our team, the biggest issue that we faced was that, if you can remember back to fall of 2021, it was still very much, there was some trepidation around COVID. Broadway itself was just kind of getting back on its feet. Students around the country were trying to figure out what they were doing after graduation. So there was a lot of uncertainty, right? Just socially. And so when it came to recruiting for this program and trying to amplify it, we had a lot of difficulty getting exposure and finding students that knew what they would be doing next spring, let alone next week, right? And
Right,
so
right.
that was a problem that we'd had, and figuring out whether or not we would be all in person together or if the program had to be virtual. And so amidst the normal pressures that you can imagine of pioneering a program, we had all of this extra uncertainty surrounding what it would look like and how we would make it successful and how also we would make it a beneficial experience for these young Black people. There was a lot of pressure I felt personally to make sure when they came in that they had a really amazing experience. So I think those were the biggest pressures, but we really didn't have a lot of pushback that I experienced. Everyone in the community was very much supportive of our initiative and wanting to help us. I think we just had a hard time figuring out how to get this in front of the faces that would really benefit from it.
Yeah, I recall going a year ago, just about a year ago now, too, to see Ain't Too Proud. And there was a lot of, there was mask wearing. They made sure that you were wearing a mask.
Hmm.
The attendants, they had their gloves and they had everything. But are theaters back to capacity since the pandemic? And have the theater companies found new ways to keep that going?
Theaters are back. Theaters are back all over the country. I think New York really kicked it off when Broadway reopened. It was like a resounding, like, okay, here we are. We're ready to get back to work. But I also think that there was this pent up energy that people had built within from being inside for so long and being in their houses that we all kind of craved the community of theater and the community of, live performance. And so people are very much so anxious to get back in the theater, and they are. So it's been great to see people surging back.
Well, awesome. And again, Bree Turner, the director for the Black Theater Coalition Broadway Across America Fellowship Program. How does one sign up or at least put their names in the hat for this fellowship? Is there a website? How do they go about it?
Yes. So if you are in New York, Baltimore, Boston, Cincinnati, Houston, Louisville, Minneapolis, Seattle, or Salt Lake City, and you're a young Black identifying college junior, senior, recent graduate, or young professional, and you have an interest in learning about commercial theater business, you can go to BroadwayFellows.com. That's BroadwayFellows.com to apply for our spring fellowship cohort. And applications are open through September 30th.
Yeah, $15 an hour. That's not too shabby.
Yeah, come on down.
Well, Bree Turner, we certainly thank you for dropping by the Black Press of America's only flagship live show, morning news show. Let it be known. Thanks a lot, Bree. And let's get the word out. Sign up. The Black Theater Coalition Broadway Across America Fellowship Program. Bree wants y'all to sign up. And look how she's smiling and stuff. Why wouldn't you want to sign up? I want to work with Bree. I'm going to sign up.
Come on down. We're ready.
You said young, though. That took me right out. It took me out of the equation immediately. Why'd you do that?
Young is subjective. Come on down.
Young at heart.
There you go.
All right. And that's what Broadway is about.
Yes.
So sign up again one more time. The website?
BroadwayFellows.com.
BroadwayFellows.com. Thanks so much, Bree Turner. And thank you
Thank
all for
you.
watching Let It Be Known.
Have a